The Christian Science Monitor described this movie as a mess, and too jammed with ethnic stereotypes for just kidding to be an excuse. Julie Salomon of the Wall Street Journal called it interesting as an example of how talented, or at least experienced people, can spend a great deal of time, money, and effort on a movie that fails consistently in almost every single scene. And Ernest Tucker of the Chicago Sun-Times hailed it as a funny, sometimes insightful look at what life might be like when a hardened criminal is plunked down in middle-class suburbia. On this episode of Ruined Childhoods, we determine the fate of My Blue Heaven.
Sequel. Sequel. Reboot. Which one will it be?
It's the Ruined Childhoods podcast.
Greetings, Starfighters. It's Ruined Childhoods time. It's Dan over here on this side.
And it's John over here. I just want to say, this is episode 45. We've been committing to this Greetings, Starfighters thing.
Did we start doing it?
Yeah.
In episode 1? Yeah, and we're 11 months in. Our first episode, if I'm correct, is January 25th.
Is that true?
2019.
Wow.
So we're coming up on the 1 year. And speaking of, while we're talking about just the end of the year, I wanted to throw out there a plug for our end of the year or end of the decade survey. And as people check it out, there's a link in our Instagram bio at Ruined Childhoods Pod. John?
Yeah. Well, and then we will discuss the results on the next episode.
Yeah. So, I feel like it's kind of slipped my mind to mention it. I know you've thrown it into some of the episode descriptions, and I just wanted to we've got some interesting responses coming in. Definitely a few trends starting out.
Nice.
Not a whole lot of love for Independence Day resurgence.
I'll also make sure to put the link. The link was in the last episode's description, but I'll put it in this episode's description as well.
Yes. So, but we look forward to kind of just, gauging, getting your take on the various remakes, reboots, sequels, prequels, what have yous of the last 10 years. And which that, by the way, if you're new to the podcast, that's what John and I talk about here.
That's what this is about. And while we're just kicking things off before we're getting into the meat of the episode, may as well bring up a few movies I've seen lately that fall into that category. I just saw the new adaptation of Little Women not too long ago.
The Gerwig adaptation.
Yeah, and I really, really liked it. It is delightful. I know that some people out there may be purists for the 90s adaptation.
You mean the one with Susan Sarandon?
The one with Susan Sarandon.
That she did not long after Lorenzo's Oil.
That is accurate. So, but the Greta Gerwig Little Women, it's really fun because it's still very much in the spirit of that era. And it's not like it's trying to, bring it into modern times, but it still feels like a Greta Gerwig mentality.
I mean, it's interesting because when I first heard Greta Gerwig was adapting Little Women, I was just like, is this going to be like the Greta Gerwig? And she's, I believe she's New York based.
Yeah.
Correct? Yeah. And I think of, which I know she didn't direct Frances Ha. Did she direct Frances Ha?
She wrote it. I feel like that's a true thing to say.
It's definitely her like voice, whether it's her
as the, kind of her as the, the character that
Noah Baumbach directed
Baumbach.
that.
Okay. So,
and they wrote it together.
Okay. Yeah. So I kind of was not sure what to expect, and I haven't seen Little Women yet, but it reads, at least in the trailers, like a fairly traditional adaptation that maybe has, I'm thinking, a little more like spunk, a little more energy.
It definitely has
versions.
energy. I mean, so I saw it with Laura, my wife, and she remembers the 90s version better than I do. And she says that this one was a little bit more true to the book and included things that definitely, I don't know, shouldn't have been omitted that were originally, and that help make the characters a little bit more rich. And, certain characters that were maybe, glossed over a little bit in the 90s version are focused on a little bit more here.
The Gillian Armstrong adaptation. That was Gillian Armstrong who directed.
Yeah.
Oh, no, just giving credit where credit is due here. And, solid filmmaker there.
Yeah. And Greta Gerwig teams back up with Saoirse Ronan and Timothy Chalamet of Lady Bird, her other main directorial
that's right. She did direct,
achievement.
That's right. She directed Lady Bird, which I thought was fantastic. Really,
I think the only other thing
Bird.
that she did was, maybe 10 years ago and wasn't like a big thing. So she's kind of like, okay, hit the ground running with Lady Bird. I mean, she's been so active in the past 10 years.
Yeah.
With, all the stuff that she does, like with Noah Baumbach. But, Little Women, when I saw that she was doing it, I was like, oh, okay, sure.
And she got Meryl Streep up in that.
She did, and it's funny because it's like Meryl Streep, I'm not going to say she's the weak link, but she's like a contender for it in that movie. There's such strong performances in there. I mean, you got yourself Laura Dern, and she's like the new Meryl Streep.
She's Marmee. Is she Marmee?
She's the mother. I don't remember the name.
I'm pretty sure that's what I remember them calling Susan Sarandon that. But yeah,
gotcha.
Laura,
she's the new Sarandon.
But and while we're on Laura Dern, just to briefly tangent, I mean, when you look at Laura Dern's career and you realize how long she's been killing it. I mean, freaking Blue Velvet, 1986.
Blue Velvet. Mm-hmm.
I forget, Jurassic Park in 93,
right.
Which, I mean, is a big film that she was in. But as an actress, Wild at Heart, I mean, just pretty much everything she did with David Lynch, everything she's done with David Lynch has been remarkable.
Then Citizen Ruth.
Citizen Ruth is outstanding.
Which is crazy.
Loves it. Tackleberry's in that. David Graff.
Oh, David Graff.
He's the judge.
Pour one out.
Pour one out for David Graff.
Yeah, she's been in a ton of stuff lately. She was just
Star Wars.
The past couple of years, yeah. And also she's in Marriage Story.
She's on TV. She's in what's the
I
Big
loved
Little
her
Lies.
in Light. Do you remember? Oh, Big Little Lies. She's great.
Enlightened.
Did you ever watch Enlightened?
I never watched it.
So good.
I'm always, when I see
good.
Mike White involved, I'm like, I know there's going to be discomfort, most likely.
Yeah, pretty much.
So, yeah, I'm still scarred from Chuck and Buck.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Remember that one?
Have you seen anything lately?
Let's see. We watched.
I know you have yet to see the new Star Wars, which falls into our.
By the time people are hearing this, I will have seen it. So, and I believe you saw it.
I did.
Yeah, we're not discussing it any further beyond that.
I will say nothing.
I'll be seeing it on Saturday. We had a little our babysitter has the flu. So, and we've had our Star Wars tickets, I think for a couple of months, since early November. So a month and a half. But
did you really need to get them that far in advance?
You know what? I think Alicia was coming back. My wife, Alicia, was traveling back from the East Coast, and I think she got a notification that they were coming on sale at this theater that we like to go to, which kind of has like limited seating. And so I think she kind of was like, screw it. I know we're going to like go see this. So she bought the tickets.
You know what, Dan? I'm a lot like Vin Diesel. I live my life 1/4 mile at a time. So I can't plan that far in advance to get tickets for a movie. It's got to be like day of or day before. I'm like, can I make this work?
Oh, well, I mean, but that's a nice thing. Like we have our regular babysitter, and we definitely book a lot of dates with her in advance because she's amazing. But unfortunately there's a bad flu going around in Seattle. So our babysitter got the flu, and I was able to call in backup, but we had a good 10 to 15 minutes of, are we going to, the panic of, did we?
So the babysitter's got the flu, but you're the one shitting yourself.
Oh, well, almost, except I wasn't, because one of the bonuses to being a high school teacher is that I teach on the younger side of high school. So my students who are former students stick around for a few years usually, and I then can employ them as babysitters.
There you go.
I will not, and I will stand on principle here, but I will not hire a student while they are in my class, while they are on my roster. Mm-hmm. I will not do that. That's my policy. So I kind of screen them freshman year, and then after that, the select few that make it get recruited.
It's all a big scheme.
Yeah, it's I recruit them. It's like what's it called when they recruit Keanu Reeves in Devil's Advocate. Like
he's been recruited. I don't think there's any other way.
Maybe that wasn't the right one. Anyway, John, sorry.
Well, attorneys get recruited. That's a thing. Headhunted.
Yes. They get but it's one of these. As they're passing by, in between classes, and I'm like, stop by when you have a moment. I have some business I'd like to discuss.
Yeah.
Al
Pacino style.
Yeah. Oh, I'm not even going to try to do Al Pacino. We'll get Cesar Gracia on the show for that.
So this episode, we're talking My Blue Heaven.
My Blue Heaven. And I'm going to jump right into it here before you synopsize.
Well, I actually was going to say that I want you to do the synopsis for this one.
Oh, okay. All right. Glorious. So, John, actually, you and I, I like that one. Glorious. You and I, if I remember correctly, saw My Blue Heaven for the first time together.
Wonderful. Go on.
I believe... Now,
So this would be 1990, probably, if we're seeing it when it comes out.
August 1990. If I remember correctly, we were spending, I don't know if it was the day, I don't know if it was the weekend, we were with Grandma and Grandpa. We were in Cranberry, New Jersey, where Grandma and Grandpa lived at the time. And what do you do when you've got 3 boys, ages 12 going on 13, 8 going on 9.
Yeah, I mean... Right, and I'd be 7.
Yeah, the math is so much easier to do with Scott since Mom went into labor with him at my 4th birthday party. So I remember that. All
right, so go on. We're with Grandma and Grandpa.
I went on with Grandma and Grandpa that night. And my Star Wars figures, so there's the relevance. Anyway, if I remember correctly, I'm fairly certain I do. Grandma took us to the movies. And I guess this was the only thing. I mean, if you look at...
I also, for anybody who is a devout listener, this is the same Grandma and Grandpa that Dan unintentionally saw The Disorderlies with for the first time on the TV at the Ground Round.
Oh, yeah. With the boobs. Yes.
With the boobs.
So
briefly.
So to kind of show you, to kind of give you a sense of what was playing in the theaters that you could take 3 kids in that age range to go see. Here's what was in the weekend that My Blue Heaven opened. It opened in 4th place. It, of course, opened against the number 1 movie at the box office that weekend, Exorcist 3, which I also saw in the theater. And I'll save that.
Right, but not for
not with
younger
grandma.
children.
No, I did not see that with grandma or with you. Ghost was in the theater, not something for children. Flatliners.
Okay.
I'm kind of going down the box office for that weekend. So Flatliners, not a picture for children. And then you had My Blue Heaven opening at number 4, Presumed Innocent, Days of Thunder, which
Days of Thunder.
I would come to love and appreciate. Air America, Mel Gibson, Robert Downey Jr., Vietnam. Navy SEALs.
Not much out at this time for children.
Problem Child is the next one, and I don't know where and when that was playing. So anyway, we went to go see My Blue Heaven. And you know what? Actually, John, my setup for this is going to lead me into the synopsis.
Perfect.
So buckle up. So we went to a movie theater. I don't recall exactly which movie theater, but it would have been somewhere in
We were
Central
in
Jersey.
Cranberry, New Jersey. This is not our home turf.
I want to say East. If I had to guess, I would say East Windsor. East Windsor. So we saw My Blue Heaven there, and I remember. I mean, first I remembered, wanting to see the movie, having been a fan of Parenthood, which came out the previous summer and paired Steve Martin and Rick Moranis, and as well as Little Shop of Horrors, another movie that I loved and still love to this day. But so very excited to see My Blue Heaven, and kind of interested in the whole. I think I discovered the Godfather earlier that year or sometime around there. So I had kind of been gaining interest in these mafia movies. And one of those movies, that was one that we saw a trailer for. And I remember distinctly seeing the trailer for Goodfellas, which was also a Warner Brothers film and was released later that year in 1990. And it stuck out to me because growing up Jewish, I think you kind of tend to, when you see something about Judaism, and I think whenever you're kind of like in a, somewhat, minority group, you recognize, and you're like, oh yeah, all right, I know that, and I relate to that. And when they in the trailer, you see a scene of Ray Liotta as Henry Hill, and he's in the shower and he's wearing the Star of David and the cross. I was like, oh, is he like a Jewish gangster? So I didn't know much about it, but I remember just seeing that trailer. And what I didn't know at the time, what I didn't know until not too long ago, is that the writer of the book and the screenplay Goodfellas, Nicholas Pileggi, was or Pileggi, sorry, my apologies if I mispronounce it, was married to Nora Ephron. The screenwriter, I wanted to do it at the same time as you. Of Nora Ephron. And Nora Ephron is the screenwriter. Nora Ephron. Okay. No. Anyway, sorry. Pour one out for Nora Ephron, by the way. Pour one out.
Yeah, for sure. So screenwriter for My Blue Heaven.
Screenwriter for My Blue Heaven, which picks up as a New York gangster is placed in federal witness protection program in the middle of the suburbs, which is where Goodfellas ends.
Right.
So more or less, I feel like Nora Ephron and Nicholas Pileggi were like working on these scripts, and it's almost like the one, I mean, My Blue Heaven came out first, so is Goodfellas the prequel to My Blue Heaven?
It's a really interesting thing to consider.
But
I'd say it's an unofficial, non-canon prequel.
But you think about the beginning of Goodfellas when it's like he comes out in the bathrobe to pick up the paper and he looked miserable, and it's the same as Vincent Antonelli, Todd Wilkinson in My Blue Heaven,
right?
So this is this is into the synopsis. This is where we pick up. We start the movie with Vinnie Antonelli, played by Steve Martin, being moved into the suburbs. He and his wife Linda are they're being handled by an FBI, kind of a really uptight FBI agent, Barney Coopersmith, played by Rick Moranis. He forgets to take off his seatbelt every time. It's one of my favorite running gags in movies that he keeps forgetting to take off his seatbelt. But
I'd say that is one of the things about, and there are so many things about this movie that, I don't know, that stick with you. Mm-hmm. And I'd say that's one of them. And there are just a lot of little lines and things here and there, especially that Vincent says, that really just stick in you. And you just remember, like, out of nowhere. They're the types of things where you're just like, what movie was that from? And it's My Blue Heaven.
Oh, and I will come back to that idea, the sense of what sticks with you and what really gets into your mind. So where it picks up is we meet Vinny, and he's given this pseudonym. We kind of get a sense for his character. He tries to tip everybody. He has no idea what his social security number is.
I don't know if he's necessarily tipping or if he's kind of greasing.
He's he kind of clarifies that later on.
Because he does say, like, I appreciate what you do, or something like that, as he slips him the money.
He does it that time, but the thing is, every other time in the movie he tips. He actually talks about he believes in over tipping.
That's true.
And it becomes his philosophy. So yes, you're right. That is implied the first time that we see it. So you've anyway. An interesting anecdote, by the way, about the casting is that Steve Martin was initially cast as Barney, and
really?
Arnold Schwarzenegger was originally cast as Vinny, and then Schwarzenegger was offered Kindergarten Cop and left My Blue Heaven.
I think we can all be happy with this decision.
Oh, everything worked out perfectly, because then Steve Martin took over Vinny and suggested Rick Moranis as Barney, but Rick
Which
Moranis
is perfect.
Because Rick Moranis loves playing characters named Barney, as he did in the Flintstones.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. So
yes, he loves playing characters named Barney. And I'm sure he loved Flintstones.
Well, he loves playing characters named Barney, and he's always paired with
Barney Coopersmith.
He's always paired with taller women. In this,
well, it's kind of unavoidable.
not really. I mean, you could, like, Tom Cruise is not always paired with taller women, and Tom Cruise is short.
Fair.
Like, but he always, who's it with? Joan Cusack, Sigourney Weaver, Harley Jane Kozak, who's maybe not Sigourney Weaver tall, but so I'm going to get back to the synopsis.
Okay.
Yeah. So Barney gets Vinny set up. You learn after Barney leaves that Linda, Barney's wife, had been planning on leaving him, and only stayed with him long enough so that he could get a bigger house in a nicer place.
And a bigger stipend.
And more money. Yeah, and more money.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you do this once you enter the witness protection program, but she just kind of splits.
She just takes off.
She goes back to New York, I think.
Yeah.
Which I'm like, how do you do that, especially if they've faked your death, which they've established happens, I think.
Well, I mean, yeah, you have to imagine that.
Go ahead.
Well, also because there are hitmen looking for Vinny, you have to imagine that knowing that she is around could tip them off that, he is still somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. So you have the whole setup of the beginning, Vinny getting moved in and his wife leaves him and he's just kind of miserable. And I think his first morning, you got the scene where he goes to the supermarket.
Right. So, and also before a lot of the scenes, there are kind of title cards and they're from his perspective. So it's like, and this is when I try to fit in.
It's from his,
and that's
I think I want to say it's like chapter titles in his memoir. If you were going to tie it to the ending where he publishes his memoir.
Right.
So, yeah. And also, I think also before this setup, you also have the Rick Moranis character, Barney Coopersmith, who you can kind of tell he's frustrated. He's talking to his partner, Bill Irwin, played by Bill Irwin.
Mr. Noodle of Sesame Street.
One of the Mr. Noodles.
I think he
Sesame
was
Street.
the original Mr. Noodle.
Was he or was it, why am I drawing a blank on it? Michael Jeter?
I don't know. I thought it was Bill Irwin.
Well,
but Bill Irwin, he's been he was in the Altman Popeye movie.
Yeah.
He pops up all over the place, and I think that he has a background in miming, and he shows that off really well with his physicality, and he manages to do that in My Blue Heaven, which is so much fun.
Wonderfully. And I'll share with you my Bill Irwin anecdote. So first of all, to support the fact that he has a background in miming, one of the, I mean, maybe not one of the first Broadway shows I saw, but back in the early 90s, he did a show on Broadway. It was he and David Shiner, another physical comedian and actor. And it was called Full Moon. And it was just all of these like miming acts. It was brilliant. It was amazing. And then, so now my personal Bill Irwin story is Bill Irwin lives, or at least lived from maybe around like 2004 to 2007 around Bloomfield, New Jersey.
Oh, really?
Or Glen Ridge. And he lived in North Jersey, and he would take the bus in to the city for auditions, rehearsals, whatever it was he was working on. And I had a few occasions where I saw him on the bus and chatted and spoke with him, chatted with him.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
cool.
Because I would be going in for auditions or doing various things.
Did you ever talk about My Blue Heaven?
No, not really. I think I just remembered... I didn't want to be too fanboyish because we were just kind of like, two guys on the bus. But I had really loved his work in Full Moon, among other things, and kind of I felt like, I didn't think it would be inappropriate to just say like, Mr. Irwin, I, just wanted to tell you I've, familiar with your work, remember seeing Full Moon on Broadway many years ago, and just, wanted to thank you.
Yeah.
So
cool.
But yeah, so, he's great in this, and they have this whole discussion about going undercover and
right. Well, that's his whole thing, is that like, because they're kind of just paperwork guys, really, and they don't really do anything exciting, and he's obsessed with the idea of going undercover, and like remembers very fondly the one time that he did go undercover and got to drive a BMW.
Oh yeah. Dare to dream. But yeah, and they have the whole thing about like, and then Bill Irwin just decides he's going to go undercover, and you can't just make yourself undercover, and that's kind of a running theme. So they have this whole scene in the FBI office, and then you get to the next day when Vinny's at the. Or no, I think first, I'm sorry, Barney's going home.
We don't have to go scene by scene.
We're not going to go scene by scene. Yeah. But anyway, so you have the parallels of Vinny's wife leaving him, and then Barney's wife leaves him she leaves him. She's a sports therapist. And she apparently has been having an affair with this pitcher who she's been treating. Apparently, and it's implied that this is not the first player she has slept with. And it's implied that the players that she sleeps with do not end up... This is not like Bull Durham where they get good. once they start
Right,
sleeping
yeah.
with Susan Sarandon of
Susan
Lorenzo's
Sarandon.
Oil.
Right.
So, also of North Jersey. But I digress. So anyway, so their wives leave. Barney's wife is played by Colleen Camp, also of the Police Academy series.
And Die Hard with a Vengeance.
And Die Hard with a Vengeance. So Colleen Camp, she leaves him, and so he's kind of lonely and bummed out. Vinny's kind of lonely and bummed out. And Vinny's also telling all of these like lies about how his wife died, or what happened to his wife. He tells he's incapable of being honest.
Yeah. And he's also incapable of not committing crimes wherever he goes.
Oh, he tries credit card fraud. Well, then this is one of my favorite parts of the movie is he discovers that all of these guys that he was, organized crime guys that he knew from New York that he thought were dead,
right,
were all in witness protection, and they apparently all live in this town.
Right.
Which I think is, I love that as a device. Like I'm sure it's not very realistic at all, but I think it's just so much fun.
And then they all form their little crime ring.
Yeah. Well, the scene when they have lunch is fantastic.
Oh, it's so funny where they're talking about how you can't get any good Italian food around there, and
yeah,
it's great.
And like William Hickey is in there with that famous the voice. It's a popover.
Yeah,
you dirty rat.
Right. So he's the guy who works at the pet shop.
Yeah, Peter Sparrow.
Yeah,
or no, not Peter Sparrow, because then the other one is Peter Baker.
Well, it's something Sparrow, and he,
Billy
so they're
Sparrow,
there because, the reason why this connection is made is because when does he get? Oh, he first gets arrested because a scene that we don't see. He steals a car and apparently. Like a pallet of booze or something and the car is stolen from a priest. So he gets picked up by the like assistant DA who's played by Joan Cusack. And her character's name escapes me right now.
Hannah Stubbs.
Hannah Stubbs, that's right.
I'm Hannah Stubbs. I'm the district attorney. She's wonderful.
And Joan Cusack, who's fantastic, especially in Cradle of Rock with Susan Sarandon about 9 years after this came out, who was in Lorenzo's Oil. But Joan Cusack, I happened to put on the movie Instant Family the other night. It was just streaming somewhere, and I just wanted something that I could put on while I was doing some work.
Yeah.
And Joan Cusack shows up at the very end in a very strange role. And that movie is, it's fine. It's exactly what you think it'll be. It's the one with Mark Wahlberg,
Rose
and Rose Byrne, where they adopt 3 siblings. Or foster them to adopt.
I watched part of it on somebody else's screen on an airplane once.
Let me tell you.
Yeah.
If you're going to watch any of it, go all the way to the end. Because Joan Cusack pops up as just like this weird neighbor who like just kind of like shows up and is totally awkward and weird and is like she doesn't even have a name. It's just like Joan Cusack is here. It's like, and I love it.
She just wandered on set. Joan Cusack,
pretty much.
By the way, the Hannah Stubbs performance and character arc reminds me so much of her performance and character arc in School of Rock.
Huh.
She's very uptight by the book, and it takes this guy who doesn't play by the rules to come in. She plays
it really well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's great.
So in My Blue Heaven, she's Hannah Stubbs, who has 2 kids and is pseudo recently divorced from her husband, who's played by Daniel Stern. And, he's just a jerk, and she's a bit of a pushover when it comes to him because he just like lets himself in and, doesn't respect her boundaries.
But she doesn't respect herself. And this is a point that Vinny makes. And case in point, the shoes. The shoes are tragic. one of my favorite lines.
So when she picks him up for Grand Theft Auto and stealing booze, they have this exchange where he points out that she's wearing these unfortunate shoes and that she should try wearing heels. And it's kind of just like, it has nothing to do with like, you should try to look nicer. It's like, you should respect yourself more.
Yeah. And Barney, I guess that's one thing I want to talk about after we get through the plot is, I guess, kind of the attitude, well, so basically the plot is this. Yeah, Vinny has trouble adjusting to this, to even going by his regular name. He keeps getting arrested, which then brings Barney in, and Barney has to bail him out. Meanwhile, Barney strikes up a relationship with Hannah.
Yeah.
And
so Barney keeps on bailing him out because he needs to keep him anonymous.
Yeah.
And he needs to keep his cover up so that he can testify the 2 times he needs to testify back in New York. And then kind of like after that, what happens to him. But like Barney's job is to make sure that until he testifies, he stays anonymous. And by committing all these crimes and getting busted by Hannah, he is continuously putting himself in danger. And she keeps on threatening to, actually arrest him under his real name.
I will say this, though. Barney is kind of condescending to her about he's like, oh, you're
totally is.
Like a couple of misdemeanors, come on. And she kind of makes a point. She's like, look, like it might not, Grand Theft Auto might not be a big deal in the streets of New York, but in a place where there's no crime, where there's very little crime, the littlest bit of crime sticks out.
Yeah.
So, but that's neither here nor there. So, Vinny, it's interesting because it's kind of got this interesting structure. The movie's got this interesting structure that's like a play where the first act is kind of this building up to the trial, building up to his first testimony. And he goes, so they go to New York, set up this is also the days when you could meet somebody at the gate.
That scene is so good.
Oh, it's wonderful. The Barney Coopersmith, the inventor of the rotary engine.
Yeah. Right.
So, yeah, Vinny sets all this up with his family, or we can presume that this is his mother and his cousin, and
right.
Yeah. So that he can kind of get away, he makes an appointment with his tailor. He does everything you're not supposed to do if you're in witness protection program. He lets everybody know he's going to be in town. Yeah. And so Barney finds him, and Barney's trying to keep him under control, but he keeps finding ways to get, and meanwhile, though, he's doing nice things. So he keeps finding ways to kind of slip Barney, or give Barney the slip. But he's also doing these nice things because Barney also, through his wardrobe shows that he doesn't carry himself confidently or proudly. And in the same way, Vinny tells Hannah, like, you need to spice up your wardrobe. He does this for Barney, and he buys Barney this suit, and then he gives Barney the slip and ends up going out and finding his friends. Barney finds him. We have I think this is our first assassination attempt on Vinny.
Right.
That comes
after our very first dance sequence.
Oh, it comes after the tremendous merengue number, because Vinny's trying to teach Barney how to be confident with women. And he's telling Barney, he's trying to give Barney these tips and get Barney to loosen up. And this dance sequence is a great engine for that change, where you really see Barney's changed, but it just totally brings out the man in Barney. I mean, metaphorically, because when the hitmen start firing at Vinny, Barney whips out his gun and fire. He knocks the chandelier down and saves Vinny's life. Vinny kind of has his moment of clarity and is like, wow, you saved my life. I'm indebted to you.
Well, no, what happens is he says to Barney, you saved my life. And Barney said, well, you saved mine first. I think in that he showed him, what it means to be confident and to live your life and to, be proud of who you are. And so then Vinny says, we're in each other's debt forever.
Yeah. That's right. So you have, so they
And he says that earnestly.
yes. And then the next morning he goes on trial and he tells the full, like with detail, he gives this amazingly entertaining testimony. But he also has this great speech about, because the defense attorney kind of tries to discredit Vinny by saying, you're in witness protection program, you're getting paid, you get a house, you get all this stuff. And Vinny's like, oh yeah, I love you. That isn't all I get. Right. And he kind of sets this attorney up, and this attorney's like, all right, he's going to sink his case. And then he goes, yeah, I also get to never see my family. I get to never go home again. I'm in this place that is not at all where I'm from. It's not home to me.
Yeah.
He's like, it's nice. It's quiet. But when you're from the city that never sleeps, it's a living hell. So,
right.
But he's really like earnest, and what I love about Steve Martin's performance is there's a big difference. Like this guy's much better at telling the truth than he is at lying. Whenever he's lying, he's so full of shit, and it's so easy to tell.
Yeah, you can tell that he's searching for all the things to say, and he makes up names like
Uncle Alfresco.
And Uncle Alfresco.
I love the Uncle Alfresco story, but that comes That comes later.
Right, but still, he comes up with these like names like Uncle Alfresco, where it's just like, what?
So it's great, but when he's telling the truth, you really can tell. And so they come back to town. Barney.
Well, but first, the thing that really sells it is that I forget if it's the judge or whoever it is, like, all right, but it's not like there's guys coming in here with like,
that's not until later.
That wasn't until later.
That's at the end. That's when he's in court in Freiburg.
Okay. My apologies.
I
That's
know,
true.
I know
That's
this
true.
because I'd been rewatching the movie in segments, and I had not watched the last 20 minutes until this afternoon. So it's very fresh.
Got it.
So,
all right,
because I thought
redact what I just said.
I thought about that as well, but yeah. So they come back, and Barney on the plane is hitting on the stewardess. In a respect,
he tells a very off-color joke.
He buys a nun a drink.
Yeah.
He said, have a brandy. It's made by monks. It's great because it's Rick Moranis totally like loosened up. And so they go back. Vinny kind of starts to set up this scheme where he's going to set Barney up with Hannah. And that's really really cute. Like, they kind of have this whole arranged meetup at a Padres game.
Which is, I never realized this until I just watched it the other day. You never see anybody playing baseball. You see them in the stands reacting to baseball plays. You see like the Jumbotron with like the little animations coming up. Yeah. And it just has a series of them reacting to things that would be happening on a field. Yeah. You never see the field.
Yeah. And interesting. And this is like, I'm surprised this isn't in the IMDb trivia, because it's totally the type of thing that would be in the IMDb trivia. Is that in 1989's Parenthood opened with Steve Martin's character at a baseball game. Steve Martin appeared in that movie with Rick Moranis. Yeah. You normally see that sometimes in the IMDb trivia. It's like, I don't know if that's trivia. That's just kind of like a coincidence. So, But anyway, I guess
it was just popular at the time to include baseball games.
Yeah. It was, it was a funny scene. And I think that's the scene where Vinny finds out that the local little league that the kids play for, they don't have a field. They don't have a good field, which I don't get, because Freiburg does not look like it is lacking for funds.
It's a very clean community. But they say that whenever it rains, the field turns into mud for weeks.
Yes.
And you know what?
True. But they're in Southern California. All right. Anyway. but
that is also true.
We're gonna get away from the logic point there. So when they come back, so Barney kind of starts off this relationship with Hannah. He takes her to a law enforcement dinner, and we have dance scene with Bill Irwin.
Another
Amazingly
merengue scene.
Gets his dance. Another merengue scene.
And you see Barney at his like most confident.
Yeah.
And I will also, or actually I should say that comes the next morning when he kicks Daniel Stern out of the house.
Yes.
But I also want to mention that the two merengue dance sequence scenes, which what other movie has two merengue dance sequence scenes that's not about the merengue? Anyway, the music, so the music for this movie was done by Ira Newborn, who also did the score for Brain Donors. Yeah. And you can definitely hear the Brain Donors do 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 do, like you kind of hear that a little bit in these merengue songs.
But I don't know that he composed the merengue.
He might have done the arrangements for them because
it's very difficult to find. I've been looking for this for reasons that will be made clear very soon. I have to go on YouTube and find it, but it's really hard to find that track. So yeah, but they have this great dance number, and he spends the night, and then he beats up her ex-husband the next morning. It's this amazing fantasy. And then also Steve Martin or Vinnie Antonelli goes to the supermarket and meets Shaldine, played by Carol Kane.
Oh my God. He has the best pickup line ever. She's in the frozen food aisle and she's like going into one of the things, and he goes like, you better get out of the frozen food section.
You shouldn't be in the frozen food section.
And she's like, why not? He's like, because you're going to melt all of this stuff. The way that he says stuff is so good.
All of this stuff.
She's like,
They go to Reno. They get married, which is this is actually based on a true story that Henry Hill happened to Henry Hill. He married this woman. It was his girlfriend, Shelley. He was in Seattle. He was actually in witness protection in Seattle. And he got married, got drunk, and called his lawyer. And he told the lawyer that he didn't get married under his... He said it's okay. He didn't marry her under his real name. And he got the marriage annulled, which explains... which would explain in My Blue Heaven how Vinny is able to then end up marrying Officer Ryback, played by Melanie Mayron.
Right.
So, and how we get there is Vinny's gang ends up getting all of these empty, like the water jugs for water dispensers. And he decides he's going to start collecting money for a little league field, and the boys.
Well, that's what it says on the containers.
No, but he's also collecting all the containers and bringing them back to I'm going to go out on a limb here. This is not his plan. This is not his original plan.
Right.
He is actually using a charity to, I guess, embezzle money, and he gets busted. He gets pulled over, and Hannah arrests him and says she's going to try him and arraign him under his real name. This is also after she discovers that Barney, who just tells her like, hey, I'm going undercover. They make him undercover, and he argues about it. And then he ends up having to go undercover as a Canadian, fencer, I think.
I forget exactly what it is, but it's, he and Bill Irwin are there undercover saying that they are there to purchase stolen goods.
Right.
Which is from
Vinny.
Vinny, yeah.
So, but Vinny
they don't
sells
know that
them
it's
out.
Vinny.
Right, and Vinny doesn't know that it's Barney, obviously. So when Vinny gets arrested, Vinny sells out Barney without knowing it. He tells Hannah, he's like, you're looking for, like, there are big time criminals right under your nose. These guys are staying at this motel. Right. And Hannah, and this is interesting because she gets really upset it's Barney undercover when she goes to make the arrest.
Yeah.
And I think she thinks that, like, Vinny kind of set it up for some reason, but that part always kind of confuses me, that she gets really upset at Barney and then almost out of spite says, like, I'm going to arraign Vinny under his real name.
Yeah.
So, which he objects to. So that they end up, because also Vinny still has to make his other trial appearance. So, of course, the mob is going to be out looking for him. And then they have this trial in Freiburg, at the end of which Hannah makes as you were saying before, the FBI would like us to believe that at any moment 2 men wearing white ties on white shirts are gonna, and as she's describing it, this is what's happening, and in comes Robert Miranda. And I forget who the actor is who plays the other hitman, but like you've seen them before.
Sure.
So and then, of course, they come in and they start firing, and Vinny escapes. He's let out by Officer Ryback, who has had a thing for him from the beginning. Mm-hmm. And this is kind of like where they get together, where they hook up. So maybe his marriage to Chaldine has already been annulled. We're not going to obsess over it.
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah, he ends up... Oh, and while he's in jail, which it's funny, he's got the run of the place. He can just kind of open and close the door whenever.
Yeah, it's so great when he's in his little jail cell and he's talking to Barney on the other side and he just like opens the door.
Yeah.
Barney's like, what is happening?
Yeah.
And he says that he doesn't like to use the toilet in there, so that the cops said that he could just use theirs.
He ends up making a phone call while he's after Barney talks to him about the trial. And then there's this kind of like escape chase scene, though you really don't know where the hitmen went. And they end up at the construction site for the baseball field, which apparently the district attorney has no idea exists, probably because it's only existed now for a few hours.
What she says, her theory is that he arranged all of this while he was in jail.
Which is absolutely correct.
Yeah.
Her theory is absolutely correct.
My favorite part about it is that there's a sign up that says like the Vincent Antonelli and then in parentheses, AKA Todd Wilkinson baseball field or whatever. And I saw that and I was just like, that is so good. Oh, that is so good.
It's so great. So yeah, so it ends up, and then the hitmen show up, and so it's before the hitmen show up. This is where Uncle Alfresco comes in. Vinny goes into the story. Because he's insulted that Hannah would think that he would dare steal from children, and he starts telling the story about Uncle Alfresco and how Uncle Alfresco is going to get him this bicycle for Christmas. In the middle of the story, the hitmen show up. Like Vinny grabs a gun, shoots the guns out of their hands, and they get arrested. He goes right back into the story. It's so funny. It's almost like they were writing the screenplay and they were like, oh, we forgot to resolve what happens with the hitmen. I just have him show up, have Vinny disarm him, have him get arrested, have him get back to the story about Uncle Alfresco. And it's great. Yeah. So yes, Uncle Alfresco.
And I mean, he's such a good shot, but I wouldn't expect any less from Cowboy Gill.
Cowboy Gill, right. Those are not super
That's Parenthood.
soakers.
Sorry, we're crossing over with our other Steve Martin.
Our Moranis Martin. Yeah.
First.
So, yeah. So then he goes right back into the story about Uncle Alfresco being dead, being shot in the back of the head. I love it because Uncle Alfresco, isn't that like Uncle Naked? Isn't that like Alfresco?
It's just like in open air, you know?
Yeah. So it's kind of where it's left, and then we cut to, I don't know how much later, but the stadium is built, it's opening day, and you've got the other the other wise guys in the sand selling peanuts, popcorn, car stereos, all the stolen goods, the cannoli stand. Philomena.
I know that this is making connections that don't actually exist, but Vinny, as well as the Little League team, at least at the very beginning, are dressed in a red shirt, kind of like a white or beige suit, and a yellow tie. Mm-hmm. So my first thought is he's dressed like a hot dog. And then I remembered, have you watched the Tim Robinson sketch comedy show, I Think You Should Leave?
No.
Okay. Well, there is a sketch about this guy who shows up to this function and he's in a hot dog costume, and he makes reference to a guy, and he's like, he's the one who's dressed as a hot dog, and it's a guy who's essentially wearing the Vinnie Antonelli, beige suit with red shirt and yellow tie. Anyway, it reminded me of it, and I was like, that's exactly what the guy is wearing to dress like a hot dog in that sketch. Anyway,
okay. Yeah.
It's a baseball game. He's dressed like a hot dog.
It's great. Why not? Sure. Yeah. So
what's also interesting is that the assistant DA announces that he's going to be throwing at the first pitch, and it's just like, who's this lady? Why is she announcing this? Well, it's because she's one of the characters of the movie.
I mean, look, Freiburg, it seems like a small town. Like, you would know.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think all the kids would be like, oh, look, it's District Attorney Hannah Stubbs or Assistant District Attorney Hannah Stubbs.
I mean, I feel like it'd be more appropriate to be like, I don't know, Billy Sparrow or whatever, the guy who owns the pet shop or something, like somebody who people actually would recognize.
He's the umpire.
Oh, that's right. He's the umpire.
Yeah. He's the umpire. Yeah. It's fun, and it ends with the merengue.
Right. So I mean,
everyone's there. They resolve everything. Oh, sorry. Both of his ex-wives. So Linda and Shaldine are back. They establish that they're both they are both Vinny's ex-wives, and that they've both now married other men in the witness protection program.
Yeah. So this movie came out almost 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And I'd say I enjoy it more and more with every viewing. And there's nothing about it that feels especially dated, except for, modes of transportation. I'm pretty sure Barney is actually driving the same car that our, grandparents drove us to the movie theater in that day.
Oh, the Chevrolet Caprice.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Which eventually became your car.
Well, no, that one. So the 4-door became Michael's cousin Michael.
Oh,
yes. I got the 2-door, the Caprice Classic.
The classic, of course, but
let's be historically accurate.
But actually, you know what? We probably were driven to the theater in the car that was in the movie.
Yes. Grandpa was not with us.
So, yeah, I mean, it's so much fun, and I'm going to let you get into your vision for this property's future by first saying that I am aware. I am aware of what you are going to say, and it was hard for me to watch it without thinking about that. So I will let you launch into what you are planning to do with this movie.
Well, for years, for definitely at least 5 years now, I have felt that of all of the movies that have been turned into Broadway musicals, nothing has called for it the way that My Blue Heaven does. My Blue Heaven, as I alluded to earlier, it's set up in this great 2-act structure, with Act 1 going up until the testimony, and then Act 2 being everything after, more of the love story and kind of the resolution to the whole Vinny crime thing. So you've got some big memorable numbers. You've got the merengue in Act 1, which is then reprised in Act 2, and then would also be your bow music. You would not open with the song My Blue Heaven. That would be your closing number, where, he's accepted this place as his home. He loves it. And now he's singing My Blue Heaven. So I've actually started, I mean, I have no permission to do this. I don't know. I've just kind of started with writing lyrics and writing songs because.
Well, I mean, Dan, I will say this. There are plenty of, and I'm not going to say Broadway, but plenty of small productions of adaptations of, movies done as stage plays or musicals that are listed as being like an unauthorized,
Yeah.
da 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 da. So it's like you could probably get away with doing something like that and testing the waters out.
I mean,
a little
I
bit.
just figured, screw it. I'm just going to like start writing. So like, and in fact, so many things seem clear to me. Like I actually would have it open with Vinny being arrested in New York and the opening number being called Miranda Rights, where the cop is trying to read Vinny his Miranda rights, but Vinny keeps interrupting him because he knows the Miranda rights so well.
Okay.
So he just starts reading himself his Miranda rights, and then he's interrogated by the FBI, and this is where you first see him making up all the excuses and telling the Uncle Alfrescos, the turkey cacciatories. Mm-hmm. This is where he starts out, and he says, that night I was in Brooklyn with a truck of penicillin for a group of sickly orphans who were being raised by Mormons. And because the congregation was against the medication, there was some hesitation despite my sterling reputation. So anyway, they break him. They break him down. At another point, they tell him that they know he robbed a bank. He goes, "This is a huge misunderstanding. There's no need for reprimanding. The teller was just handing me donation for a charity when the teller's other arm by mistake hit the alarm. So open up these cuffs and set me free." So
oh my God.
And then he finally just breaks down and he talks about how, his boss, Mr. Gazzo, shoots Mr. Capelli. And it's the same thing that, that he testifies with later. And the courtroom scene would almost be like a mirror of that. But then, I mean, you could do so many other numbers, And you could also flesh out a lot of the characters, like Bill Irwin's character, Melanie Mayron's character, have Barney and him do a duet. You can't make yourself undercover. When his wife leaves him, I want a whole song, "You're No Fun." Like, I want a whole thing with, he has a system for everything.
Right. She's talking about how he has a system for putting syrup on pancakes.
So that the bottom one gets as much syrup as the top one.
Which I think about every single time I eat pancakes.
And I love the way he delivers that line. Yeah. But you could also, and I'm thinking with this musical, I would actually set it in the 1970s. I would kind of firmly plant it in the 1970s and combine original songs with standards like Stranger in Paradise. Why not have Vinny sing Stranger in Paradise after Linda leaves him? I
could also see him doing a number when he's like in that first grocery store scene.
It's a vegetable.
Well, it would end with that, but something about how he's incapable of not committing crimes when he takes the, price marker and marks every single item as like 39 cents.
Well, that could be The Boy from New York City.
Yeah.
Which is the song that they use in the show. You could also but I was thinking you'd have a song of him like with the manager talking about all of the traditional Italian foods that he wants, like Mamma Mia, I drool for a pound of gabagool.
Yeah.
I don't know. That one's not written out.
Yeah.
So
but also, and also just speaking about things that stick with you from this movie, going back to what we said at the beginning, that line when the manager is just like, "Is there anything, if you have any suggestions, please feel free to fill out a, comment card or whatever. Is there anything that you weren't able to find?" And he's like, "Arugula." And he's like, "Arugula?" And he's like, "It's what's arugula?" And he's like, "It's a vegetable."
It's a vegetable. Yeah.
Yeah. Like that every time I have or I'm aware of arugula.
Yes.
Existing nearby.
Yes. You got to say it's a vegetable. But then, you've got lyrics. So this is why I was trying to look for the merengue music, because I've been writing lyrics to the merengue song. It's like, first you move your hips, right, left, left, right, down, down, then you step like, except it sounds too much like dance your cares away, worries for another. So I'm trying not to make it sound like Fraggle Rock. And then you've got this amazing tango number built in with the frozen foods tango. You could melt all this stuff. You could make it turn to liquid if you stood close enough. Then resisting would be rough. There would be no doubt about it. You have a duet going back and forth. With you, I cannot. You're just too friggin' hot. You know, I've got something's been broken
By the
since
way,
I left Hoboken. Something's been
something that
missing
we
ever
haven't
since
mentioned.
oh yeah.
Something that we didn't mention though is that, and what's her name that he meets in the grocery store?
Shaldine.
Shaldine, played by Carol Kane,
Yeah. Carol
who's
Kane.
amazing.
Yes. Yes.
Sorry, just wanted to point out like how great this cast is.
And this is, by the way, where I'm thinking of deviating a bit from the script is because what brings someone like Shaldine to Freiburg? And
Right.
I'm thinking, what if I want to add in like another assassination attempt and have it be that like, so Barney calls her in, or Vinny calls Barney after they get married, and he tells Barney, he tells Barney his name, and tells Barney her name, and Barney's half awake, but then early the next morning he wakes up and he remembers, he's like, oh, that's an alias for this woman, like hit woman mob, and he's like telling, Barney gets Vinny to go undercover and kind of, get her. I don't know. That's something I'm thinking about there for that. But then,
that could be. It's a whole other separate thing.
I mean, because you also have to have it. I think you need to kind of. There's a few things that you need to clarify. Like you need to kind of establish that, like, what is it about Vinny that Officer Ryback is attracted to, and because she ends up like running off with him and having a baby with him, but she knows very little to nothing about him, and it's just this like instinct,
right? Well, yeah, and I mean, when she first sees him, she finds him very attractive.
I mean, I would establish that like she became a cop so that she would meet because she was into bad. She's like, how do I meet she's like, I love bad boys. How do I meet bad boys? I'm going to be a cop.
So, and at the beginning of the movie, in the first scene with her and Hannah, she sees Vinny, and she was just like, don't you ever get that feeling when you see someone and the hair on the back of your neck stands up? And she's just like, no, and she's never had that until, and then you see that when she sees Barney, she kind of reaches and touches the back of her neck.
Oh, definitely.
Which is so funny, Yeah. I mean, Rick Moranis is great, but the fact that he would be cast as somebody who would make the hair on the back of someone's neck stand up at first sight is very
wonderful. Is wonderful.
Oh, I love it. I think it's great.
But because it's like he's the right person for her.
Yeah.
Much like you can tell his ex-wife was not the right person for him. Her ex was definitely not the right person for her. Yeah, you can. I mean, I don't know. I think I like the relationships in this. I feel like in the musical, I would need to give more to it, give more focus to that relationship, to who Shaldine is.
I think it's also really fascinating that the main characters of this movie are all coming off of like major breakups.
Yes. Well, we don't know how recent hers is, though. We can assume it's pretty recent. I'd
say so based on the conversation that she has with her kids when they're going to go spend like the weekend or whatever with him.
Well, not to mention the fact that the turtle that he has in the beginning, because he says, you remember Dad, right? He used to live here. So,
yeah.
I mean, and that turtle has not been alive for a long time, nor will it remain alive much longer.
Well, so
Cleaning in Solitude, that's another song. That's a ballad. Hannah gets to sing
right.
it.
So the thing is, like, thinking about him has driven her to drink, and she's just like, oh my God, you're making me drink. You're making me
I'm drinking
clean.
in solitude.
Yeah.
I'm cleaning in solitude.
So you have to imagine that it's pretty recent if she's having that response and is so surprised by it.
Yeah. So good point. Yeah, they're coming off of breakup. So I guess there's really a message in this movie about being with someone that's the right person for you, and looking at it through that lens, I think it's more justifiable to have Vinny go from Linda to Shaldine to Ryback, because he says the whole time, he's like, I like women kind of, he goes, I like them kind of dirty, he says.
Yeah.
But I guess what he doesn't realize is that, like, I guess kind of like the I don't, quote unquote, dirtiest, I don't want to call it dirty, but like the extreme of that is this cop who loves criminals.
Yeah.
So yeah, anyway, my musical, I would definitely flesh out her character. But yeah, so that's, and I mean, man, honestly, I think I know someone who would be a amazing Barney in the musical of this. No, and I mean, yeah, because I can't. I'm going to know in a moment what your thoughts are on it. But someone who I know through my friend Ray is Jared Gertner. Jared is he's a professional actor, an Olivier-nominated actor. He understudied Josh Gad in the original Broadway cast of Book of Mormon, and then he played Elder Cunningham, Josh Gad, the role that Josh Gad originated, played that role on the West End. That's how he got the Olivier nomination. He's been on Modern Family. He's had other bits on TV, but he would just be the perfect Barney. And I've kind of always imagined him as being a great Barney. So I feel like if I ever get this done, he might be the first person I actually send this to. Because I just think he's the right age, and I think he's the right type. I think the humor of it and the character would he'd be great. So anyway, that's my pitch. John, what are your thoughts?
Well, like I said, it was really difficult to not think about your idea, knowing that you had this idea that you were actually working on for this musical. So of course that kind of stuck in me, but there were a couple of things that stuck out. One of which was that line that we talked about before when he said, "We're in each other's debt forever." So it kind of, and this thing is totally like open for some sort of sequel. They're all still living in Freiburg at the end of the movie, and you have to imagine that they can get into other hijinks together, and maybe, Barney is in some sort of bind and would need Vinny's help, and they are in each other's debt. The only other, and I haven't thought through what exactly that would be, but I mean, I feel like nothing is too weird for that. What are you thinking?
I've had some thoughts on this.
Okay.
Well, because the musical's been around a lot longer than our podcast, and the purpose of our podcast is to not just explore one possibility, but explore many. And I did think of a sequel. I didn't necessarily connect it to that line, though that's a great foundation for it. But I was imagining some sequel where maybe it's Barney's retirement, and or maybe,
which would be interesting because it would be Rick Moranis' return to acting.
I know. Yeah. But so you could do something something around that, but I was also thinking, I mean, the organized crime is organized crime, and the organized crime today certainly links to the organized crime of yesterday. So what if something were to be unearthed or discovered that would potentially either call on Vinny that would require Vinny to testify again, or would put hitmen onto Vinny? And it'd be funny because I'm imagining Steve Martin playing the role, but without doing like fully adapted to suburbia and just looking like Steve Martin without like the spiked hair. Right. And just looking like Steve Martin, but then, and maybe even acting like Steve Martin, except for when he gets pulled back in, even do a whole rib on the, just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in.
Yeah. I also want to point out, this may be the only movie that I can think of where Steve Martin has different hair.
It's one of the few. I feel like Mixed Nuts.
See, I'm not as familiar with Mixed Nuts, but like, it's
which also Nora Ephron. Nora Ephron.
Is it really?
I believe, yeah. Mixed Nuts, which not a good movie.
Right. I think I saw it once and I was like, okay, we're good.
Not a good movie.
Another
Yeah,
thought.
Nora Ephron.
Well, I mean, also, what if Barney and, I mean, maybe Bill Irwin, I don't remember his character's name, but maybe they are undercover, you know, and it's like 30 years later, of course, but it's like they're undercover and they're in like so super deep, and maybe they are undercover in some sort of mafia situation and they have to bring in Vinny.
Oh, Vinny to get them out. What if
yeah.
Hannah is like up for a seat on the Supreme Court? I mean, where does that character go? Like, what happens? So maybe Hannah and Barney live in Washington, D.C., and Hannah's going to be, you know, Hannah is, I don't know, maybe she's just a powerful lawyer or something. You don't have to stay in Freiburg, or maybe like
right.
they're in D.C., but Vinny's in Freiburg. Mm-hmm. And so I think there's a lot of potential in a sequel. Do you have any ideas of like the creative team that you would want to see behind it? Or?
Oh, no, I didn't, because that wasn't actually my primary idea.
Oh.
My primary idea would be some sort of prequel series or something about Uncle Alfresco. And maybe it's all centered around a much older Vincent talking about, like, telling stories of Uncle Alfresco and then seeing them kind of come to life. And my thought for Uncle Alfresco is Ray Liotta. Oh. Which would all bring it full circle.
Yeah, full circle. Oh man, Ray Liotta. I'm a little disappointed that Ray Liotta, and I'm sure there are issues, and I've heard Ray Liotta is not the easiest to deal with, but a little bummed that they didn't. And maybe, I don't know, maybe he's in there for a cameo. I don't know. I haven't seen it yet, but bummed that Ray Liotta was not brought into The Irishman.
I did not notice anything that could potentially be a Ray Liotta situation.
I'm hoping we're hoping to, we've got, I think, a January 2nd. I think we have some time and we're like, okay, I think we could take 4 hours on January 2nd and watch The Irishman.
So it's 3.5 hours for the movie, but you're factoring in bathroom breaks?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
No worries. So
in 4 hours.
That's the but that's The Irishman. That's not My Blue Heaven. So no. John, anything else that you want to add on about this movie?
It's great.
It's great.
It's awesome. I will say it's not on any of the more traditional streaming platforms, but I happen to be staying at an Airbnb that had a Roku TV, and it is streaming currently on Roku's platform. So if anybody out there has Roku, you can watch it that way. I do have it on DVD. I haven't seen it in a while. I'm thinking I still have it, but it's one of those like very flimsy cardboard covers. It's not like the plastic one.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
This is when they like first started making DVDs.
Yes.
They're like, let's see if this packaging works.
I don't know. Let's do My Blue Heaven. No one will care if it's a complete failure.
It's not even in a widescreen format. It was made for your regular pan and scan.
Yeah, then it makes me wonder if the only other time that I've seen this movie in its true form was when we went with Grandma and Grandpa in 1990.
Yes. But Grandpa did not join us. This I remember.
Sorry,
I'm almost positive
Grandma
did not join us at the movie. So, but I do remember that we saw it, and I remember seeing the trailer for Goodfellas.
And I will say, going to see this with, you know, the three of us with her, something does feel familiar about it. I will say that. Yeah. I mean, I was 7, so my memory is a little hazier than yours would be. Yeah.
No. I mean, yeah. I couldn't tell you what posters were in the lobby, but
no, but you remember that, you know, what the trailers were, at least one of them was.
I don't remember any of the other trailers, but I mean, like ever since then, I have remembered seeing the Goodfellas trailer and being intrigued by that movie. And sure enough, it's become one of my favorite movies over time.
You're not alone there. A lot of people list that amongst their favorites. I'm not crazy about it. I'd say that as far as mafia movies go, My Blue Heaven is as good as it gets for me.
I was going to say, is as good as it gets for you?
Nora Ephron? Is that Nora
As good
Ephron?
No, James L.
It
Brooks.
feels like...
James L.
Oh,
Brooks.
okay. It feels like it would be Nora Ephron.
No, I know you're not big into the mob movies. I do have an appreciation for a good mob movie, so I would gladly recommend any others. Some under the radar flicks about organized crime and just crime in general. State of Grace is a great one that doesn't often get a lot of love. Ed Harris, Sean Penn, Gary Oldman.
I mean, I like all three of them. Gary Oldman's one of my favorites, so
he's amazing. So
I'll check it out.
Anyway, John, let's talk about what we're doing on our next episode.
So our next episode, the reason why we landed on this one is because the first theatrical adaptation of this story was made in 1920. And as we are approaching 2020, it feels appropriate to celebrate that this was made into a film 100 years ago. And it is a story that's been done a ton of different ways. We're going to talk about as many of them as we possibly can in the next episode, but it's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Is that the full title?
That is the full title of Robert Louis Stevenson's novella.
And if anybody wants to watch the 1920 adaptation with John Barrymore, I'm going to be checking it out to gear up. But this one's going to mean a lot of homework about just listing all the different ways it's been, adapted.
I may check out 1995's Dr. Jekyll and Ms. Hyde, starring Sean Young and Tim Daly.
You might do that.
Or I might not. We'll see.
You might not.
I'm going to check out something and we're going to talk about it. So I'm psyched for that.
Well, anyway, until next time.
Yeah.
Nora Ephron. Come on.
I'm going to Nora Ephron out of here. Nora Ephron Hubbard. Good journey.
Good journey.